What are you expecting for the new year? Think about your resolutions, if you made any, or your goals or your hopes. What are you hoping for? What are you expecting in this new year? Last night, I was putting my kids to bed, and as I was talking with them and praying with them and talking about the new year, some of the things that they had experienced in 2016, but what are they hoping for and expecting in 2017, I got some fun and unusual answers. One of my older childs, Annabeth, she said that she was expecting to keep her room clean more often, and she was hoping not to pay a cleaning duty or expense. I put a new rule in our house that if I have to clean up after you, you have a cleaning fee. That's the word I was looking for. You have a cleaning fee that you'll have to pay me in order to get your items and things back, or to be able to, eat again if you leave all your food out, whatever it might be. And so her expectations were to have a cleaner room and to not have to pay a cleaning fee throughout this year, and that she's going to start calling me Dad and her mom. She calls us Daddy and Mommy, but she decided now she's a little more mature, and so now we're going to become Dad and Mom. So I was like, okay, those are not the greatest expectations for a new year, but great. Addison, one of my other daughters, I have 3 children. I have 3 daughters and a son. My oldest was out. She's 13. She spent the night out at a friend's. So Annabeth, again, is 12. That was hers. My 10-year-old, her expectations for 2017, she said, she didn't want to have any more seizures. I don't know if you were here on Christmas Eve, but my 10-year-old daughter Addison had a seizure during the middle of worship, and she had never had that experience before. And so thank you for your prayers and your thoughts and your concerns and all your encouragement in the midst of that. We'll do a follow-up here in the next couple of weeks with her just to do some more intense testing, but she hasn't had any more seizures or hasn't skipped a beat since Christmas Eve and getting back home from the hospital that night. So thank you for that. So she said, 2017, okay, I don't want to have any more seizures. She also said, I'm going to try to keep my room a little more clean. I gave them a big pep talk, right? So about keeping the house clean, so that's on their mind. And then she said, I want to try to be more loving to my siblings. And I was like, oh, that's a good one. I'm excited for that. And I think she had one more there, but it wasn't, it was not significant. And then I went to my son, and as I was tucking him in and putting him to bed, a couple of his expectations or New Year's resolutions or hopes for 2017, he said, I want to sleep in my hammock every night. They got these hammocks, and so for Christmas, and so the hammocks, I suspended them in their rooms. So drilled some holes in the wall, really great things to do to your house. Put some holes in the wall, and now they all have hammocks in their rooms. And so he wants to sleep in his hammock every night of the year. So he's done that a couple of nights. We pile up a bunch of pillows underneath in case he rolls out of that thing. It's not really good parenting, but it is what it is. So his expectation is to be in the hammock. Then he also wants to play more with the neighborhood friends and try to do more things with them, as if he doesn't do that already. And then his last one was that he wants to be homeschooled. And I said, well, why do you want to be homeschooled? And he said, well, because vacation's almost over, and I don't want to go back to school. So if I'm homeschooled, I can just stay home with you guys. And I said, that will not happen. That will not be a reality of your new year. And so he was like, please. I was like, no, just go to sleep in your hammock, man. That's what you get. That's your new year. And so those are some of their expectations of my kids. But I wonder what your expectations are for the new year. What are you hoping for? Or what are you anticipating? Or what are you longing for? The way I set my expectations for a new year is I actually try to imagine myself on this day into the new year. So I try to picture myself in 2018, and there's these things called lead measures and lag measures in the world of business. A lag measure is looking back on a year and seeing what the results were. A lead measure is setting expectations in front of you, and then if you reach those lead measures, the lag measures come out. I don't know if that makes sense or not. So if you were looking back on your 2016 and you had a goal to lose 10 pounds, but you didn't lose 10 pounds, it's because you didn't have really good lead measures. So if in 2017, if you want to lose 10 pounds, you need to set some measures out there to say, okay, I'm going to get up 15 minutes earlier every morning to do some exercise and stretching. Or I'm going to lower the amount of calorie intake. Or I'm going to stop drinking soft drinks. You put some measures in front of you that allows you to get to where you want to be at the end of the year. So I consider myself in 2018. So take just a minute and imagine yourself on this day in 2018. Do you think the things that you're hoping for today will become a reality? Do you think the goals or the expectations or the hope for 2017 will be realized? That they'll actually come to some sort of fruition for you, and that they will manifest themselves in your life in such a way that you will be changed and different at the beginning of 2018 because of what you're deciding in 2017. More specifically, as you're thinking about yourself in 2018 to make the decisions for today, do any of the decisions you make today involve Christ? Are you expecting Jesus to change anything in you in 2017? Now, you may want a lot of different things changed. Maybe you want to get out of debt, or maybe you want to lose weight, or maybe you want to rekindle some relationships, or reconcile old relationships, or whatever might be going on, or grow new relationship, whatever that may be for you. And so you have all these expectations, but have you expected Christ to be in the middle of those things? Have you placed Jesus at the center of those? In your expectations, we allow Jesus to change everything about you in those moments. This morning, as I was in the shower, I think that's one reason I didn't shave, because, in the shower, there's a lot on my mind, a lot going on. And so I was thinking about this idea and this realization that Jesus truly changes everything, but do I expect Jesus to change everything? And so I was thinking back over my last 24 hours, and so just Christmas Eve, yeah, it's that kind of year. New Year's Eve yesterday, what did that look like? And did I expect Jesus to show up in a way that he would begin to change everything? And as I was thinking back through the day, most of the day, I did not expect Jesus to change anything. And in fact, I didn't really invite and wasn't even really looking for Jesus to show up in certain places. I mean, specifically in one place. Last night, unfortunately, I don't know if you heard, there was a mid-air plane collision in McKinney. And so two planes crashed into each other. And I'm a chaplain with the McKinney Police Department. And so I was called in that to do death notifications. And there's potentially 3 death notifications. 2 of those we didn't have to do. One of those we had to do, and we knew who that person likely was, because the wife of the pilot who died showed up at the McKinney Police Department. That's where we were housed. A couple of us chaplains were housed there waiting to be basically deployed to go to these homes to tell their families that their family members had died in these plane wrecks. Well, she had not heard from her husband. She knew that he was going flying, and so she went to the scene, and the police officer said, "Well, go to the police department and just hold up there until we can get you more." So hours and hours we waited because the FAA was involved. They couldn't identify the body, and so we were sitting with this woman who pretty much knew that it was her husband who had died in that plane crash. And in that moment, and in those moments, in those hours, and sitting with her and talking with her and being with her family and having her call some folks and helping her get a game plan together on how she would handle it and deal with it and tell her kids and all this sort of stuff. In those moments, I expected Jesus to be there because I needed Christ to be there, because you can't do those things on your own power. You can't do those things in your own might. You really need the guidance of the Holy Spirit, and you need Christ to show up to change the situation, that whatever that is and that challenges and those difficulties, that Jesus will be there in the midst of that. And so I expected Jesus to be there. But then as we finished up there and as we left, I went and met my wife. She was at a party with all of her tennis friends, and so they were having this party, so I went late to that, met her there. And as I went to that party, I can tell you I did not expect Jesus to show up at that party. I was not anticipating that Christ would be. I know that Jesus is everywhere and God loves you, and you kind of have those realities, and it's really great. But do you realize that? So I'm walking to this party, and some of the conversation, one of the conversations were 2 women talking about their small little dogs that they have and how frustrating it is that these 2 little dogs poop on their nice carpet. And, and I'm like, I just left a woman whose husband just died in a plane crash, and now I'm hearing about dog poo. What kind of reality is this for me to some degree? But I'm like, I'm not for sure Christ can be in this moment. And this is me in the shower this morning thinking back on my day yesterday. But the reason that I think that Christ didn't necessarily show up, and it's not that Christ wasn't there, is because I didn't expect Jesus to be in those conversations. I wasn't looking for Christ to change those moments. I was just going to hang out with my wife because she's cute and I love her, and to be with her friends. I don't even really know them. You got to go be social and friendly and shake hands, and it's nice. People are fine. But it's one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those things too where I didn't expect any conversation there to be guided into a conversation of God's holiness. And that may be the reason why none of the conversations moved in that direction. And then we went from there, and we raced home to get home just enough time to ring in the new year with our kids and do sparklers and some fireworks and some of those things. And one of my kids is like, "Is this legal?" She's like total rule follower. can we really do fire? I'm like, sparklers are cool. And then we did some like other little chickens that lay eggs, little things on the ground. She's like, can we really do these? I was like, listen, party pooper, I don't know. We're doing it. Happy New Year. Just enjoy the hen that lays an egg and, the tank that shoots out some stuff. And then my other son's like totally into it. He's out in the yard trying to light the fire, light the grass on fire. And he's dancing around with the sparklers. I'm like, you're going to burn yourself. And he's like, yeah, no. And I'm like, okay. So these two, and so I'm ringing in the new year. But I didn't necessarily expect Jesus to be there either. I wasn't looking for it. I was having a good time with my kids. But I wasn't anticipating and expecting and looking for Jesus to change anything in that situation. And it doesn't mean that you've got to go through your life in every moment just anticipating and expecting Jesus to change things. But what I realized as I was in the shower this morning thinking about just my last 24 hours is that I am the problem, not Jesus, when it comes to changing things. You see, there's a group of men, and we call them the wise men. And we're going to read about them in Matthew chapter 2. They were the Magi. And these Magi, actually the word magic comes from Magi. The Magi were astrologers, and they were scientists. They dealt with sort of chemicals and stars and all of these sort of things today that we would actually call like astrologers and scientists. But in that day, they were called Magi. And because of their knowledge and their wisdom and their ability to do these kind of miraculous things with like science and being able to read the stars, because of that, the tradition has become that the word magic has come from that. But the real magic of the Magi is that we read in the story in Scriptures that they were actually looking for and noticed something different. And they noticed this star. Look at Matthew chapter 2, verse 1. It says, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem, in the territory of Judea, during the rule of King Herod, Magi came from the east to Jerusalem. And they asked, where is the newborn king of the Jews? We have seen his star in the east, and we've come to honor him. And when King Herod heard this, he was troubled, and everyone in Jerusalem was troubled with him. We'll come back to that. He gathered all the chief priests and all the legal experts and asked them where the Christ was to be born. And they said, in Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what the prophet wrote. You, Bethlehem, land of Judah, by no means are you least among the rulers of Judah, because from you will come one who governs, who will shepherd my people Israel. Then Herod secretly called for the Magi and found out from them the time when the star had first appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search carefully for the child. And when you found him, report to me, so that I too may go and honor him. And when they had heard the king, they went. And look, the star they'd seen in the east went ahead of them until it stood over the place where the child was. And when they saw the star, they were filled with joy. They entered the house and saw the child with Mary, his mother. Falling to their knees, they honored him. They opened their treasure chest, and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Because they were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their own country by another route. You see, the 12 days of Christmas actually starts on Christmas Day and goes until January 5th, and then it ends on the eve of January 5th, and January 6th is a huge Christian holiday. It's called Epiphany. Now, in America, we don't really celebrate Epiphany too often. And the church has kind of lost this idea of celebrating Epiphany in the church. Epiphany actually was more significant than Christmas for the first several centuries of the church. In the first few centuries of the church, Christmas wasn't as big of a deal as it is today. And Christmas has grown over time. I mean, even things we talked about, the Nativity and why Jesus was sent over the last few weeks, the Nativity didn't come about until the 1200s. But before Christmas became so big, Epiphany was one of the most significant holidays of the church. Easter was big, Epiphany was big. Because what Epiphany does, it actually recognizes and looks at three different things. The visit of the Magi to Jesus, the baptism of Jesus, and Jesus' first miracle of changing water into wine. I had a roommate in college, not a roommate, he was across the hall from me. He was not at all a Christian by any means. But the one thing he knew was that the first miracle of Jesus was that he turned water into wine. And he would often say, Abe, you should just drink more. You should drink more often. You know you love God and all that, and I know you're a Christian. He's like, don't you know Jesus' first miracle was he turned water into wine? Jesus was a drinker. You need to drink more. I mean, this was his mentality. I'm like, man, how do you know that is Jesus' first miracle and you don't know anything else about Christianity? Well, many of us don't even know that that is often that is recognized or recorded as the first miracle of Jesus, and is a significant event for Epiphany. And the reason that the church, the early church, and many churches still celebrate, not so much here, you'll go to Germany and they have huge Epiphany celebrations. Actually, kids will dress up like kings or magi's or wise people, and they'll go door to door, and they'll actually ask for offerings to give to the poor. In the same way that the three wise men here gave gifts to Jesus in his poor state and being a manger, they would actually, people will go on Epiphany and get these gifts to give to the poor. It's a huge celebration. Because what Epiphany does is it recognizes that Jesus is the Son of God. Because God was sent into earth, into humanity on Christmas. And then you have the first miracle of Jesus turning water to wine. It shows that he has the power over nature and all of those things. And so that he actually has the ability to perform miracles. And then when Jesus was baptized, there was a voice from God, and it was like a dove descending on Jesus, and the voice of God said, "This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased." And so it was God's recognition of saying, "That's my guy." Recognize, that's my guy. And he will change everything. And so Epiphany is this huge celebration. It's January 6th. It's this Friday. It's a celebration of a God who entered into humanity and a God who changes everything. And the reason the Magi are so important and so significant to the story is because they recognized something different, and they were expecting to find something significant by following the star. And so they followed the star. Not only did they find something significant, they recognized who Jesus was. Falling to their knees, they honored him. And they opened their treasure chest and presented him with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And because they were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they went back to their own country by another route. And so the Magi are significant in the story is because what it does is that the story of Jesus and the birth of Jesus actually goes beyond a manger. And it goes beyond just the story of the Israelites and the Jews. And that because of the Magi went and recognized and honored the Son of God. Then they went from there back to their hometown is a recognition that Jesus, the story of Christ and the message of Jesus goes way beyond the manger. And it permeates itself into our own lives. But I think we have a real challenge of really knowing and trusting that Jesus can change everything. Think back to your goals of 2017. Do you think Jesus can help you in those goals? Do you think Christ can help you in those expectations? I think there's two different things. Sometimes when we enter into our faith in early days, and maybe you're in a place now where you're just new into your faith, or you're asking questions about your faith, sometimes you wonder if the whole story is true. Can God really change things, and can Jesus make a difference in my life? But the other side of that is also true. I mean, if you've been walking with Christ for a long time, you get so used to walking with Christ that you really forget sometimes how much Christ can change things. And you don't expect those changes in your relationships, in your resources, in your decision making. So I want you to think about one thing for just a moment. What is that one New Year's resolution that you're hoping for most? What is that one thing you're really longing for, or you wish would be different or changed? As you're thinking about that, do you expect Jesus to be at the center of that goal or hope for your new year, that Christ might change everything in that? And do you truly believe that Christ can change everything? Because if not, you'll end up in 2018. And you'll be the same guy or gal that you are today, just 1 year older. But what if your New Year's expectations had Christ at the very center? and you were constantly asking yourself, how is Jesus changing everything in my relationship, in my resources, in my decision making? How is Christ changing these things? If we would ask that question and we would allow ourselves to enter into the very presence of God through Christ Jesus, and just like the Magi, that we would honor Jesus, but not only honor Jesus, but that we would go off and live our lives sharing the story of Jesus and allowing the message of Christ to change us, our lives would be different. And the lives of the people around us would be forever changed. So do your New Year's resolutions. Have Christ at the center. And are you expecting Jesus to change everything? If so, I can promise you that God is faithful. God is faithful. And that he will change your life in ways you could never possibly imagine.